Before Amazon, before online wish lists, and before children could scroll endlessly through toys on a screen, there was one book that could take over an entire American living room. The Sears Wish Book did not just sell toys. It taught children how to want, how to wait, how to circle, how to compare, and how to imagine a bigger life waiting just beyond Christmas morning. For generations of American kids, it was not just a catalog, it was childhood in printed form.
There was a time when one of the most exciting things a child could hold in America was not a toy itself, but a catalog full of possibilities. The Sears Wish Book arrived in homes and immediately changed the atmosphere of the season. It spread across coffee tables and living room floors. It was opened by children, parents, siblings, and sometimes grandparents. Pages were folded, dreams were circled, arguments began, wishes grew larger, and Christmas stopped being only a day on the calendar. It became a season of imagination. The Wish Book was part shopping guide, part family ritual, part emotional event. It taught children how to look ahead, how to want things they had never seen in person, and how to imagine themselves into a future made of bicycles, trains, dolls, games, stereos, and all the shining promises of modern American life. Tonight, we're looking back at 15 things the Sears Wish Book changed about American childhood, and the first one may have mattered more than all the rest.
Before the Sears Wish Book, Christmas anticipation already existed, of course, but the catalog changed the scale of it. It took what had once been a shorter, more abstract period of waiting and stretched it into something children could physically hold for weeks at a time. The arrival of the Wish Book meant Christmas had, in some emotional sense, already begun. It was no longer just about a tree appearing in December or presents arriving one morning. It became a long season of looking, choosing, comparing, hoping, and imagining. Children did not merely wait for Christmas anymore. They waited for the catalog first. And once it arrived, the season acquired shape. Every page was another chance to dream ahead. Every rereading made the holiday feel closer and farther away at the same time. The waiting itself became part of the experience. That may be one reason people remember the Wish Book so vividly. It did not only show children what they might receive, it gave them a whole emotional runway leading toward Christmas morning. And for many American kids, that long runway became one of the best parts of childhood itself.
One remarkable thing about the Sears Wish Book was that children across the country were often looking at the same pages. A child in a farm town, a suburb, a city apartment, or a small rural house might all be circling the very same train set, doll, bicycle, or board game. That created something larger than a personal shopping list. It created a kind of shared national childhood. The catalog helped standardize imagination. It gave millions of children a common vocabulary of desire. Kids talked about the same toys, compared the same pages, recognized the same product photos. Even if their homes were different and their budgets were very different, they were often dreaming from the same source. That was powerful. Long before the internet created a shared visual culture, the Wish Book was already doing something similar in print. It helped make childhood feel collective. It told children in quiet but persuasive ways what was exciting, modern, fun, and worth wanting. In that sense, it did not merely reflect American childhood. It helped define it.
The Sears Wish Book changed childhood in a very physical way. Children did not just look at it, they interacted with it. They circled the toys they wanted, folded page corners, underlined prices, put stars beside favorites, returned to the same pages again and again until the paper softened and the spine began to feel lived in. The catalog became an object shaped by desire itself. That physical relationship matters. Modern wish lists are often invisible,
stored in a phone, a browser tab, or an app, but the Wish Book asked children to engage with wanting in a tactile way. You held your hopes in your lap. You marked them by hand. You built your own map through the pages. And because the catalog changed physically as children used it, it also became a record of their longing. You could see which pages had been loved most, which toys were only glanced at, which items felt too expensive to circle confidently, which dreams a child kept returning to even after pretending not to care. The book did not just contain wishes, it absorbed them.
There is something special about the way catalog photography can enlarge a child's imagination. The Sears Wish Book did this constantly. Toys were staged to look vivid, important, and almost magical. A bike was not merely a bike, it looked like freedom. A dollhouse was not just miniature furniture, it looked like a whole world. A chemistry set suggested intelligence and adventure. A train set implied control, movement, and a kind of grown-up mastery over the world. The pages made toys feel larger than the homes they would eventually enter. And that mattered because children often encountered many of these items first as images, not as real objects. The Wish Book allowed imagination to work before reality ever arrived. In fact, sometimes imagination was more powerful than the toy itself once it was opened. The toy in the catalog had already been perfected by distance, lighting, description, and anticipation. The Wish Book did not just show products, it taught children to dream in scale.
For many children, the Sears Wish Book was the first place where desire and reality quietly met each other. The catalog invited dreaming without requiring immediate honesty about money. A child could circle the biggest train, the most beautiful doll, the nicest bike, the latest electronics, and the fantasy could remain intact for a while. On those pages, wanting did not yet have to answer to a family budget. That was part of the magic and part of the ache. Many adults remember circling items they now know their parents could never have afforded. Some remember understanding that even while they were children. Others only realized it later. But in either case, the Wish Book became a place where hope stretched beyond the practical limits of the household. That made it emotionally complicated in the best and saddest ways. The catalog taught children how to dream big, but it also gave them early lessons in restraint, disappointment, and the quiet love of parents trying to do what they could within real limits. It was not just a book of toys, it was often a child's first encounter with the distance between wanting and getting.
But the Sears Wish Book did not just change what children wanted, it also changed how families talked, negotiated, compared, and imagined Christmas together. Once the Wish Book entered the house, it often stopped being a private object. It became communal. Children showed parents what they wanted. Parents responded with silence, laughter, caution, or practical questions. Siblings argued about whose turn it was. Grandparents sometimes joined in. The catalog spread out across family space and turned wanting into conversation. That changed childhood because it moved dreaming into the center of the home. The living room became a place of negotiation. Maybe, that's too much. Pick one. You already have something like that. Show me what else is in there. These little exchanges became part of the season. Children learned how to ask. Parents learned how to redirect. Families together created the emotional theater of Christmas expectation. In a modern shopping culture shaped by private browsing, saved carts, and individualized screens, that kind of open family negotiation is easier to lose. But once, the Wish Book made desire a group event. And childhood unfolded right there on the carpet. One of the most underrated things the Sears Wish Book taught children was how to enjoy looking without immediately buying. Children spent hours browsing,
not purchasing, not checking out, just looking. They revisited pages for the pleasure of revisiting them. They imagined, compared, changed their minds, built rankings, mentally designed Christmas mornings that might never happen exactly as planned. The act of browsing was not a step on the way to purchase. It was the experience itself. That distinction is important. Modern shopping often moves quickly from desire to transaction, but the Wish Book existed in a slower emotional space. It encouraged lingering, it stretched out fantasy, it let children dwell in possibility. This just looking was not empty or passive, it was creative. The catalog trained children to savor anticipation, not merely consume outcomes, and in doing so, it gave childhood a form of imaginative leisure that now feels surprisingly rare.
The Sears Wish Book did more than show children toys. It taught them names, brand names, product categories, model numbers, the visual hierarchy of which toys seemed most important, which bikes looked fastest, which stereos looked cooler, which dolls looked more desirable, which items seemed for older kids, which ones felt modern, and which ones already looked a little less exciting than the newest thing on the page. In other words, the Wish Book educated children in consumer language. It taught them how to recognize status even before they fully understood economics. A child learned that some toys looked grander than others. Some bedrooms seemed to belong to a more glamorous life. Some items felt like proof of being up to date, lucky, or admired. This did not always happen consciously, but it happened. And that means the catalog did not just change shopping, it helped shape the social imagination of childhood itself. How kids judged what was exciting, what was ordinary, and what seemed just beyond reach.
If the Sears Wish Book brought children together, it also set them against one another in all the usual ways siblings know best. Who got the book first? Who folded the page? Who circled the doll? Who wanted the same thing? Who seemed more likely to get what they asked for? Who had already marked too many pages? Who had touched the page with sticky fingers? The catalog became a stage for comparison. That was not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, it was part of what made the experience so alive. Siblings negotiated, teased, copied, competed, and sometimes secretly admired one another's choices. They learned about each other through the pages. One child loved bikes, another loved science kits, another wanted a dollhouse, another kept turning to electronics. The Wish Book made these differences visible. And because it appeared within family space, those little rivalries became part of the emotional architecture of the season. For many people, childhood Christmas memories are not only about toys, they are also about arguing over the catalog on the floor.
One reason the Wish Book felt so powerful was that it did not merely display products already familiar to the household. It brought in visions of what came next. New toys, new electronics, new forms of entertainment, new styles of bedroom furniture, new gadgets, new versions of play. The catalog often made children feel as though they were peeking a little way into the future, and that future looked colorful, polished, and full of possibility. This was especially important in an era when many families did not constantly encounter new merchandise in the way modern households do. The Wish Book concentrated novelty. It gathered the year's promises into one object and sent them into the home. That had an effect on childhood. It made Christmas feel like a doorway into modernity. It linked the season not only with generosity and celebration, but with progress itself. What was new, what was next, what other children might soon have, these things arrived in the catalog before they arrived in the neighborhood. And that made the Wish Book feel less like a list of products and more like a preview of the life children hoped to enter.
And maybe the reason people still talk about the Wish Book so emotionally is that it was never just about shopping. It was about texture, ritual, memory, and the physical feeling of childhood itself. The Sears Wish Book gave children something incredibly powerful, a visible world of possibility. Before the internet, before non-stop advertising across personal screens, and before most homes had endless visual access to products, children often learned what existed through far fewer channels. The catalog changed that by putting image after image directly into their hands. This mattered because seeing is different from merely hearing. A child could now see the bike, the doll, the train set, the racetrack, the microscope, the boombox, the pajamas, the bedroom set. Possibility became visual, specific, and emotionally immediate. The imagination no longer had to build entirely from words or vague descriptions. It could attach itself to pictures. That made childhood feel fuller in a certain way. The Wish Book did not simply tell children what could be wanted, it let them stare at it long enough to make it part of their inner world.
Although the Sears Wish Book is remembered most strongly through the eyes of children, it also changed the emotional life of adults. Parents and grandparents looked through it too, not always for toys either. They looked at clothes, appliances, furniture, decorations, home goods, tools, watches, and gifts for one another. The catalog invited adults into their own kind of wishing, even if they were more practical about it. That mattered because it made the book a true family object. Children did not own all the dreaming. Adults participated too. A mother might dog-ear a page with a new robe or mixer. A father might linger over tools or a radio. Grandparents might point out what children really needed while quietly looking at something for themselves as well. The Wish Book blurred generations in a surprisingly tender way. It reminded everyone in the room that wanting is not only for the young. And for a few weeks each year, it made the whole family feel a little more hopeful, a little more playful, and a little more open to imagining.
The arrival of the Sears Wish Book changed the emotional meaning of the mail. For many children, the mailbox was suddenly not just where bills and envelopes came from, it was where the season itself might appear. The catalog arriving by mail made ordinary delivery feel charged with excitement. A thick book dropped onto the porch or pulled from the mailbox carried with it an entire world. That changed childhood in a very specific way. It gave anticipation a physical root. Children knew where the magic was coming from. They watched for it. They asked whether it had arrived yet. They learned to associate the post, the porch, and the front door with possibility. Modern digital wish lists rarely create that same drama of arrival, but the Wish Book did. And for a generation of children, the mailman did not just bring letters. Sometimes he brought Christmas.
One reason people remember the Sears Wish Book so intensely is that it lived not only in the mind, but in the senses. The weight of it, the feel of glossy paper, the way pages made a soft flipping sound, the smell of the ink, the worn corners, the pencil marks, the creases, the sense that this one object had passed through the hands of everyone in the house. Digital shopping can be efficient. It can even be convenient, but it is rarely memorable in the same way. The Wish Book created a physical memory. It asked the body to participate. Children sat on the floor with it, carried it from room to room, put it beside the couch, hid it under a bed, brought it back out after dinner. The book aged through use, and its aging mirrored the emotional life of the season. That physicality gave the experience staying power. When older adults remember the Wish Book now, they are often remembering more than pages or products. They are remembering texture, weight, smell, presence. They are remembering what it felt like to hold childhood in their hands.
In the end, perhaps the most important thing the Sears Wish Book changed about American childhood was this.
It gave childhood direction, not in a literal sense, but emotionally. It suggested what was exciting, what was possible, what was worth hoping for, what kind of person you might become, what kind of room you might live in, what kind of fun mattered, what counted as a good Christmas, and what sort of future seemed just ahead. It gave children a map of desire, a map they revisited each year. That map did not only shape what they wanted under the tree, it shaped how they imagined themselves: adventurous, stylish, grown up, clever, fast, creative, popular, modern, lucky. The pages carried all of those coded promises. And maybe that is why the memory of the Wish Book remains so emotional, because it was never just a catalog. It was a printed geography of childhood itself, showing kids where their hopes could go, even if they never reached every destination they circled.
What the Sears Wish Book changed was not just Christmas shopping. It changed the emotional structure of American childhood. It gave children something to wait for, something to circle, something to compare, something to dream over, something to argue about, something to carry around the house, and something to remember decades later with a feeling that modern scrolling rarely creates. Because the Wish Book was not only a catalog, it was a season, a ritual, a family object, a shared language, a source of longing, a piece of paper that somehow held excitement, disappointment, imagination, status, hope, and memory all at once. And perhaps that is why it still lingers so strongly in the minds of people who grew up with it. Not because every toy was received, but because the book itself made wanting feel magical. What do you remember most about the Sears Wish Book? The toy pages, circling what you wanted, or simply waiting for it to arrive? If this brought back memories, stay with us for more forgotten pieces of everyday American life.